think one of the most exciting things for 2026 is the junior men moving up into elite. So we've got Asa Vermette, Max and Alran, and Tyler Waite, Ollie Clark are probably the big names moving up. Give us your thoughts on that, the level of disruption that can bring, and your view on that move.
I say it's very exciting. I think for the sport as a whole and for fans, it's really, really exciting. I think that there is a big difference between racing a junior category and racing an elite men's category. And I think the challenge for those lads will be trying to race the elites as they race juniors, because there's no doubt the speed's there. And I think a lot of people are saying, well, if there's 30 males going into the final, 5 of those places are probably taken up with these lads.
Yeah.
But it unfortunately, it's not that simple. It really isn't. And I think that their challenge will be all of a sudden you've got your, for want of a better word, idols, the people you look up to, whether they're teammates now, with Max and Till. They're there. They're at the top of the hill with you. It's quite hard to maybe find your place. And mentally find your place. How am I going to cope with this?
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to see how they get on.
Well, we saw Jordan do it the first time of Askin, right? In Lenzerheide, like show that you can make that leap up. Admittedly, probably that win maybe set him back afterwards because you're kind of dealing with that and the realization of it. But
I'd say that you've kind of encapsulated the situation there. He comes into elite, doesn't know any different, wins the race. Everyone's like, oh, well, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, Jordan's he's had to go through his struggles and come back up. And the bike rider doesn't change. The fitness doesn't change. These things in a small period of time don't change, but it's what's between the ears, I think, honestly, is the real challenge.
Yeah. But they seem to have an ease about them. And it looked in juniors anyway, not that it's coming easy because that downplays the amount of work that these guys put in, but you hear about Max until they're having fun, they're not taking life too seriously, and they're not training super hard yet. They've got elite beating times on track, admittedly not under exact same conditions and in that category with that pressure, but they've been doing it with a level of maybe slightly lesser equipment in some instances and a little bit or a lot less training in some. Like, do you think that they are set up to up the game? Like, maybe it takes them a while to find their feet, but do you think it's another level up from what we saw Jackson and Jordan bring?
Yeah, I do. And I think those boys would be, for me, their technique is probably the best technique that's out there. The way they stand tall, the way they drop their heels, the way they kind of stay centered on the bike, they're not moving around an awful lot, the way they make the bike do the work and the way they corner. So if we talk about them training or not training or how much they're doing, they're in a very good place on that bike and they ride the bike very well. So if they're posting those times and looking comfortable, that sort of shows that their technique is underpinning that. And when you've got that underpinning technique, the sky's the limit really, because you don't watch them and necessarily think that they're going to crash every 2 seconds. And some of the other riders we see at the elite category do look as though they're on the ragged edge.
Yeah, for sure.
So that to me is the most exciting thing. And when I watch them trackside, I think they make this bike riding look good.
Yeah, well, you can look back at the end of the season, which, Asa put down an incredible run, fastest time of the day, arguably looked more in control than Jackson's kind of 11 out of 10 run, which was spurred on by the expectations and the necessity to deliver with Loic, in theory, at the top of the hill, ready to drop. But yeah, I think that's a good example of Jackson on the absolute limit, or at least looking like it was, and then Asa looking like there was still a little bit left and actually still pipping him.
Well, this is it. And that's why we race bikes, isn't it? Because of the excitement. That whole Mont-Saint-Anne with Gracie's absolutely monster crash, Jackson putting in a run where it looked like he was going to crash again and again, but the pace stayed high, and then Loic doesn't turn up to the start gate, and everyone was like, "This is unbelievable." So yeah, I always look back on the last season and sort of those exciting highlights, because they sort of spur you on and motivate you for why we put the work in that we put in and travel about and do all the things we do, because that's why we do it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, for the thrill of it.
Yeah.
What can teams do to help these juniors? Like, we've definitely got some smart teams behind a lot of these riders. What if you were, looking after one of these young guns coming up? what would you be doing to try and help them?
I think I bang on about this a lot, but I'd be trying to focus just on the process of what they do. Let's get the bike set up and let's use some data to prove whether we're right or wrong. Let's get you against the clock in certain instances, but not in others. So I think really that definition of trying to consider when they're on their bike, are they playing and learning, or are they being judged? You know, are we kind of putting you into this zone where you need to now deliver a run now? Because that makes them, I think it gives them an expectation. And testing sometimes isn't something, sometimes you can get a bit carried away with testing and you put in a faster run than the old dog and you think, you know what, I've got him covered. But the old dogs know that it's not a race. I'm doing an 8 out of 10 run. I need to get the data. I need to learn where I'm at. And they save it for the big occasion. So probably trying to manage that and explain that to a rider, not to get too carried away. If you're a little bit faster than one of the elite guys, brilliant. But don't get complacent on that. You know, don't get carried away. Let's just keep moving forward. And again, manage their expectations that maybe you shouldn't go out and try and win the first World Cup. Just put in a really good run. You know, that you can't control where other people are going to finish. If you put in a banger run and it's 10th, amazing.
Yeah.
If you put in a banger run and it's 12th, amazing. If you put in a banger run and it's 3rd, we're even happier. So I think trying to manage the expectations and the pressure that they'll probably feel.
Oh, it's going to be so exciting. I can't wait for it to get going. And one of those juniors has made a fairly significant change. Ollie Clark's moved to Mondraker from MS. That is a big shift. A lot of change in product. But he doesn't seem to be hanging about. He was 8th in seeding at Hardline, and I know he wasn't super happy with that. He felt like he had plenty more in the tank for race day. And he's been out in New Zealand putting in the graph, getting everything dialed in. But that's going to be an exciting one to watch, I think, because maybe the most under regarded rider in that crop of riders coming up. I think maybe even though he got that win, he doesn't seem to get talked about as much as your Max and Till and Asa and Tyler.
I think he's generally sort of on the, when you were to rank him on results, he'd probably rank lower than when you watch him ride a bike, and again showing potential. And he's a big strong lad. You know, he's a bruiser of a guy. He's like Brooke McDonald 0.2 or whatever, you know. He really is. But for me, what's an interesting one is that Mondraker setup when you put him with Ronan and Pinky. It's like how that's going to work together, and because they're all kind of wild riders, it's going to be really interesting to see. And I don't know how well they know each other and how, you know, the work they're doing together, but I think that's going to be really exciting for Mondraker. And you know, Ronan's not going to want to get beaten by someone who was a junior, and he's Pinky, so they're all going to, you know, push really hard, aren't they?
Yeah, well, and Pinky we've seen what Pinky's capable of. It hasn't quite fallen into place for Pinky yet, but when it does, you know, he's clearly a race winning capable rider.
And I think that team setup, when we talk about managing expectations, Jorge who's there and Martin Morrison is there, those guys are really level-headed. They've been in the game a long time. They've done different roles. You know, they're not going to get too carried away and they're not going to be too up and down. And I think that will help them. Not if you're coming into that environment, you want to know your team's got your back if you've had a good day and if you've had a bad day. Yeah,
but 3 riders going for the win in one team. It's always interesting when you've got that level of drive and commitment and expectation in every rider in the tent, basically.